Violence versus covenant. The real hoodoo understanding of the kingdom. Peace and clarity to the remnant. Today I'm teaching on a distinction that unlocks real hoodoo spirituality, biblical authority, and the true nature of the kingdom. Jesus said, "From the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. But David, God's chosen king, never took the kingdom by violence." And that contrast reveals the difference between human force and divine covenant. So let's see what Jesus meant by the kingdom suffers violence. When Jesus said the kingdom suffers violence, he was not endorsing violence. He was describing what people were doing to the kingdom. John the Baptist announced the kingdom, and from that moment, people tried to force their way into it. Zealots wanted a political Messiah. Crowds tried to push Jesus into kingship. Pharisees tried to control the movement. Herod tried to silence it. Everyone wanted the kingdom on their own terms. Everyone wanted to force it. This is the violence Jesus is talking about. Human pressure against divine timing. It is not covenant. It is not order. It is not how God transfers authority. It is men trying to seize what only God can give. And when you look at it, David is the opposite of this violence. David never seized the kingdom. David never forced the kingdom. David never manipulated the kingdom. David never accelerated the kingdom. He is the anti-example of Matthew chapter 11, verse 12. 1 Samuel 16, God rejects Saul and anoints David. 1 Samuel 13, 14, God said he sought a man after his own heart. David's kingship is not a human promotion. It is a divine appointment. And because it is divine, David refused to take it by force. Basically, David waits for God's timing. David is anointed long before he is enthroned. He serves Saul. He flees from Saul. He hides in caves. He leads outcasts. He becomes king of Judah first. Year later, he becomes king over all Israel. The assignment comes before the seat. The calling is real even when the circumstances contradict it. Twice David has the chance to kill Saul. Twice he refuses. Why? Because David understands order. David understands timing. David understands covenant. He would not violate God's order to obtain God's promise. He would not touch what God has not yet removed. He would not take the kingdom by violence. This is why God trusts him with the throne. And notice, God removed Saul, not David. 1 Samuel 13, 1 Samuel 31, Saul dies in battle. David does not overthrow Saul. David does not assassinate Saul. David does not stage a coup. David does not force the kingdom. God removes Saul. God clears the seat. God establishes David. When God gives a kingdom, he also removes the obstacle. When God appoints, he also aligns the timing. See, it was the people confirming what God already established. 2 Samuel chapter 2, verse 4. Judah anoints David. 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 3. All Israel anoints David. The people do not make David king. They recognize what God already decreed. Human agreement follows divine decision. This is the opposite of violent pressure Jesus described in Matthew 11. And it was the covenant of Saul that explains the difference. 2 Chronicles 13:5 says God gave the kingdom to David by a covenant of salt. Salt means permanence, preservation, divine loyalty, unbreakable order, incorruptible covenant. Salt is the opposite of violence. Salt is the opposite of human force. Salt is the opposite of manipulation. Salt represents God's side of the covenant, the side that does not shift, does not decay, and does not break. David's throne is not built on violence. It is built on salt. Violence is human ambition. Salt is divine appointment. Now let's talk about how this reveals real hoodoo spirituality. This is where the revelation becomes clear. Real hoodoo is covenant-based, not force-based. Real hoodoo is order, not chaos. Real hoodoo is timing, not pressure. Real hoodoo is assignment, not ambition. Fake spirituality tries to force outcomes. Real hoodoo waits for God's release. Fake spirituality manipulates. Real hoodoo obeys. Fake spirituality grabs power. Real hoodoo receives authority. David is the blueprint of real hoodoo. You don't take what God intends to give. You don't force what God intends to appoint. You don't accelerate what God intends to unfold. This is salt. This is covenant. This is order. This is real hoodoo. So the final word, the kingdom suffers violence when men try to take what only God can give. But the kingdom stands firm when God gives it by covenant. David didn't take the kingdom. God gave it, and he sealed it with salt. This is the revelation. This is the pattern. This is the order. This is real hoodoo spirituality.